Welcome to another episode of Successfully Live. I'm Adam O'Donnell, the co-founder of Successfully. I'm super excited to be here with Rachel Orston. She's the CEO of UserIQ. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Adam. Thanks so much for
Definitely.
having me.
Definitely. I mean, Rachel has been in customer success for most of her career, most recently working with IBM and their Watson team over customer success there. She's also worked at great companies like Dell, EMC, Showtime, and Turner Broadcasting. So super excited today to just really dive into adoption and the rise of the power of the user. We're aware of this, but just kind of tell me why you see that as a big trend that's more than we already know as customer success leaders.
We talk about customer like the customer, but at the end of the day, the customer is a bunch of users and people. And I think that at the end of the day, it's someone's testimonial that matters. It's the individual NPS score, and I think that users matter and understanding users matter. And I think we went through this period where we felt that perhaps building relationships and the whole notion of having that high touch is hard to do with companies that maybe sell, have high volume, amounts of customers, or this notion of tech touch versus high touch. But I do think with today's technologies, you are able to build a relationship with users in a meaningful way at scale. I really do think it's possible today, and I'll tell you why. I think one is with big data and AI, it's possible to understand and detect patterns with users now more than ever. And I think honestly, if you think about it, like generation, the I generation, people born after 1997 are now coming into the workforce. These are people that have always known mobile, always known gaming, always known the internet. And so I think that users today, whether they're that generation or even older, I think that they expect a level of personalization and you to know them. And I think with what's happening with big data, with machine learning, I think it's possible to understand users and what they're doing inside your application. And also with things like mass messaging platforms, whether that's intercom or other sorts of chatbots, chat applications, it's really possible today to message and engage with users individually when they need engagement, right? When they need help, when they need something. So I think this whole notion of it's possible today to understand a user and engage with that user, that's happening, and that can happen at scale. And so I think that that's just made possible by the maturity of technologies that are out on the market today.
The rise of the power of the user, right? And so you're basically like, we both believe that the users have the power at the end of the day. So
Well, yeah. I mean, think about it too. Like, more and more companies are employing things like trials and POCs. I mean, look, freemium's always been heavily debated inside SaaS, but it's still around, right? And I think that more and more SaaS businesses are offering, continuing the try before you buy, and that's putting the user in a very important seat in the buying process. And I feel like sometimes when we talk about customer success, we talk about it as a post-sale, after the sale effort, but really you have to win the hearts and minds of those users early on even in the buying process. And I think that's gonna, I don't know, I think I don't think that's going away, and I think it's gonna continue to be I think it's just gonna continue to impact customer success teams.
Oh, no doubt. I completely see that. I want to push on. So we agree that that's the main challenge, but you're saying the solution is really just a potential automating that process of communicating with that customer. And which could be an interesting solution, but I know that there's some people who are listening to this right now and are like, wait, so you're telling me the rise of the user and now we're going to automate the way that we talk to those users as opposed to just engaging personally, I would love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, when I mean automating, I don't necessarily mean, automation and says like a robot's going to respond to you. What I mean by automating is if I know the types of things somebody wants to do inside a product, I can provide more personalized, targeted onboarding, for example. I can provide more help and guidance, so you think of in-app campaigns now, or, having a chat interface available. So if somebody is struggling to get something done inside a platform, rather than having to shoot off an email, being able to chat with a support or, an onboarding specialist, live in the application, which is a human being, responding back to say, hey, I'm trying to do something. Can you help me? Right. Or they can do self service and get the information that they need. I do think people want as much self service as possible. And look, everybody wants an easy to use, great experience. And I think those experiences improve with knowing users and understanding users. And the more we understand them, the more we can nurture them within our application, the better the experience is going to be.
I'm a VP of customer success, and I know my users are getting more and more power, and I've got to just keep getting better with engaging with them. Like, what's some low hanging fruit things that I can do that I can control?
Sure. I mean, some of the things, back to, users and the kind of that power is really understanding the adoption phase, because we all know that you don't have retention. Like, nothing matters if you can't nail adoption, right? If you can't get that first 30, 60, 90, sometimes sadly for some products, it takes longer to get that thing up and running. But that first initial adoption phase, however you define that as a customer success leader, you have to understand what that journey is. And along the way, I think it's become more paramount than ever that you identify what are the quick wins, because you have to get those quick wins early, and those quick wins will differ by customer. But let's face it, right? If you're depending on the application, there's typically a certain number of jobs to be done, or things of why they bought you, things that they want to get done in the application that have business value to them. And so I think the ability to figure out, how do I measure that time to value? How do I ensure that those wins happen and they happen within the time frame that the customer wants and expects? I think is going to be really critical. So I think that those are the things. If I'm, thinking in my customer success leaders hat, I think now more than ever, if customer success leaders are not mapping out the first 90 days, the onboarding, whatever that is, maybe again, 100 days onboarding journey for your software platform, and what those quick win milestones are along the way, you're missing a big opportunity. And then measuring, are those milestones being hit? The other thing that I recommend too is, why not do NPS? Why not assess? Why not get voice of the customer feedback? And this is where technologies are evolving, where, why wait till after the onboarding's over? I feel like the check-in meetings are becoming very outdated. I know a lot of people aren't fans of them, but you should be able to do an NPS at different ones of those stages to assess like how that experience was. Maybe it's not an NPS, but it could be a micro feedback campaign in the application, like thumbs up, thumbs down, did this work, 5-star rating. How was this after you've, achieved a certain level of capability within the platform, right? So
I hear
I
that.
think you don't have to wait a long time to start getting early indicators of, are these users happy or not? And I'm tired of us all waiting for support tickets and just looking at support tickets. And support tickets are important, but that's after they've had friction. That's after they've had a problem, they've stopped, and now they have to enter in a support ticket. That's a crappy experience. And so again, where I get excited is, I think that there's ways now for people in that moment when they're trying to get better help, get better engagement, and give more real-time feedback. And I think that's transforming how we look at adoption.
I definitely hear that. One thing you mentioned was milestones.
Mhm.
How are you suggesting that we gather those milestones at each of the different buyer levels and then track to that? Because that's something we've found is a definite challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think you just have to ask. I think you have to ask what those milestones are and capture them, early. And that's sometimes missed when you're only focusing on your buyer and the buying cycle. This goes back to, you have to be focusing on your end user even up front in the buying cycle, because I think the challenge is, if you're focusing on the buyer, many times is not the person logging in, and is not the end user that's then going to measure, that adoption. And so I think it's important that you do interviews and ask during the buying process, hey, can I talk to some of the end users? Who will be some of the early champions? And start to gather that information. And I think it's just really good questioning and interviewing and collecting that. And there are some software applications too that I think are going to start to evolve. I think over the next year where they can start to collect that up front. I mean, think about it. Why not be asked that question when you first log in? What are you trying to do? Let's make sure we're helping you, right?
What have you found is the biggest reason why people don't actually adopt?
Think a lot of software platforms, frankly, and as SaaS has matured, we've got a lot of complex software out there. I mean, sometimes it's just overwhelming. And I think if those quick wins are not identified up front, you have to nurture. I mean, sometimes users log in and they don't know where to start. And if you don't have good onboarding, if you don't have, and frankly, lots of times they're too busy and they don't have time for the onboarding calls or they forget. I mean, they might have heard it in a meeting and they got the documentation, but I'm a big believer, and obviously, this is a big part of our platform, but I'm a big believer of in-app guidance, either and I'm not necessarily suggesting it as a substitute because I don't think it's a replacement. I think there's a huge amount of value and importance in the onboarding experience, and you want to have a customer success manager or implementation onboarding leader, whatever how you call in your organization, really be that Sherpa. So I'm a big believer in that role and having a very focused, if you can afford it, and depending on your size, a dedicated onboarding team. But like anybody else, like we need reinforcement. You need to be very focused and targeted. So when that person, after the kickoff call or after the welcome email, when they log in, they're being presented and guided with, we know what you're trying to do. Here's how you do it. I mean, literally like that's simple. And I think it's just, we overcomplicate things and just get them to be very clear and intentional about what are the first 5 things you want them to do and guide them to it. And then honestly, congratulate them. Like sometimes even just doing that, like we have something in our platform where we obviously we're looking for people to do a certain number of segments, creating segmented users or creating a campaign, creating an in-app engagement. And when they do a certain number of those, we give them like a high five card. We present them with a high five, like, hey, high five, you created your 5th or 4th, campaign, kudos, you're on your way. And those things like go a long way to encouraging users who are new to something and making them feel more confident. Because ultimately, it's about building confidence. And how are you going to drive that confidence? On an ongoing basis, right?
Hooked is the name of the book, and it talks about the trigger investment reward, and you have to have that cycle to create a habit of using a product. So you're rewarding them for what they're doing. It makes so much sense. Do you have any other examples like that of what y'all are doing at UserIQ? I mean, just as like y'all are trying to be a customer success platform or growth engine, like what other wins have you found that have worked with your own software?
I've learned coming into UserIQ and seeing us deploy successful NPS in-app engagements for ourselves, but also helping our customers is not only are we seeing increased open rates, but our customers and us, we're seeing more of where people are on the fence. We're seeing more, because we're getting more responses. We're seeing more, okay, what are those 7s and 8s? What's going on there? And then more importantly, we're able to correlate that to what are they doing in the platform, what's happening in their experience, and correlate that to their score. And that's really powerful because now you're getting a bigger picture of what might be happening with that user. Does that make sense?
It does. And so, I mean, I want to just ask, like, how frequently are you analyzing that feedback?
All the time.
Is that
all the time?
So it's not like a cohort thing. It's not like, hey, we're trying this thing and then we're going to go in a month and check it. Like you're just like, as you're getting feedback, because I would imagine the challenge with that would be that you get confused easily because you're getting just like randomly hit at different times.
We do an onboarding. So we do cohorts. So we will always do based on an onboarding timeline. We'll do a specific onboarding NPS just to get a snapshot of how that experience is going, because we do believe that that's an early indicator that we want to capture. And then we also do quarterly NPSs across our cohorts so we can see NPS shifts over time.
The last thing I would question on that one is just asking someone NPS too soon in the process. We found with our last company that they're just like, I can't give you that yet. I don't know. Like, stop bugging me. Have you had any friction on that?
I think it has to be timed. And that's what's so great about a platform like UserIQ, where you can very much do it very targeted after a certain amount of time and also with a certain activity. So it can be send an NPS to all users who have, because again, if you've mapped out your milestones and you can track those milestones, which you can do in a platform like UserIQ, and you can say, you could be very thoughtful about saying, I only want to show an NPS to somebody who has accomplished and done these activities in my product over this period of time. Because to your point, let's say somebody's even been with you. You raised a really good point. Let's say somebody's been with you with 90 days. They've logged in, maybe not that much, and they haven't done a whole lot. You still want to know that. That's actually very important, but you wouldn't want to send them an NPS survey. So you don't want to just make it time-based. You want to make it time-based plus, have they accomplished a certain amount? And honestly, what we also do in our tool is we also look at show me all people who haven't done what we expected them to do within a certain amount of time. And then maybe the message is different. Like, hey, we've noticed, you haven't done X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Can we help you?
On adoption and the rise of the power of the user and platforms like UserIQ coming up, Pindo, and a lot of other platforms in that category. Like, what makes y'all different? I just I know you're super biased, but I'm just really curious, just because a lot of CS people are going to be listening to this, and how are y'all actually different? Because in my mind, it's just what's the real difference?
We're one of the few, if only, platforms that really are exceptional at what I say all three things, which you really need for customer success. You need great analytics, so deep user intelligence and the ability to understand things both at a user level, but at a cohort, segment, and also account level, right? Because we still need accounts. I talked about the power of users, but in customer success, we still look at things, in the lens of accounts and customers, et cetera. So I think that's, one thing we do. I think the other's very targeted engagements and being able to do those both, on demand and in real time. So I think that's really powerful capability. But the third one is being able to measure customer health. And being able to integrate other data sources, whether that's financial data, support ticket data, and being able to actually give you a holistic view of customer health based on that analytics and engagement. We're one of the few that really do all three. And that's something that we're going to continue to invest very heavily in because I think a lot of, and do that in a very easy to use, simple way where you can start to get great data, engage, so that non-technical users like CSMs, product marketers, we have product executives who use our platform, they can create those messagings, those campaigns really easily. That whole ability to understand, engage, and assess the health of your customers. We feel that we're one of the few, if only, that do that exceptionally well.
Rachel, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure, Adam. I love talking to you and hope to get you over to Atlanta sometime soon.
We definitely will. Another great episode of Successfully Live.